So I recently made a video about how we can add community cosmetics in Hytale. If you didn't watch the video, don't worry, the proposal is just to allow players to upload logos, retextures and custom models, categorize them by tags for stylistic and thematic consistency, and have it all be user moderated. The video got a lot of comments with many great points being raised. An idea that several people brought up is that they can do a monthly or annual vote on which community cosmetics should be added to the game. This would actually be an excellent solution early on, just give the developers a final say and bada bing bada boom, you got a bunch more cosmetics in the game than what the artist could possibly make in that time, and it's basically free and takes no time to implement. The only potential downside is that it could come with some drama between contestants, but honestly, the positives very obviously outweigh the negatives here, and I think it would be fun, create community engagement, and it would make people compete on who can best recreate the Orbis art style, so it would also make artists improve. Additionally, it would be a relatively fair way for famous YouTubers to get their custom avatars, instead of Hypixel making official YouTuber skins themselves, although it would still make sense to ask those YouTubers for permission in those cases. It's important that you cater to them, as they are what's gonna make or break Hytale's success. The more the game grows though, the less viable this will get, because there will be thousands of people wanting their cosmetics in the game, and there may be servers out there that do not want to stick to the Orbis art style and want people to have skins of other art styles. I mean, you could always hold separate competition for different art styles, I guess. We'll just have to wait and see how things go. And another reason it would be a great idea to do this before making the moderation system is that you get a very clear idea of how high of a demand there is for these cosmetics. If you're getting 1 million cosmetics submitted a month and only 10 of them pass, then we know we're gonna need something that can handle the higher volume, and you can start developing a better system. So yeah, perfect suggestion, it fits perfectly into the strategy. A lot of people have some critiques with the user moderation, and I feel like I really have to address the elephant in the room, which is that developing the system would be expensive and would take time away from development. This is true, it would absolutely cost time and money to set up infrastructure with the UI and everything, but I think it could be minimized depending on how you do it. If Simon were to develop this system, he should use an external team. Submissions and moderations can happen on a website removed from the game, so it doesn't need any Hytale team involvement other than for the guidelines. You will then need a way to plug the output of that website into the game, which would require Hytale developers, but I'm sure that wouldn't take too long, and I would like to hear opinions about this from the Hytale devs. But going off of Hypixel's experience with external teams, an issue could arise here. The external team could have no clue what they're doing, which could end up with unforeseen development time and cost. Fortunately, I think there's a way to get around this. Since this is a feature that is very important to a lot of people, I think the community would be very willing to help out, so it's a good time to deploy one of those bounties that Simon has been talking about. My video goes over a lot of the specifications that the system will need. It's not complete, but if we can finish the specifications and put it out there with a $10,000 prize for whoever can make it, I think lots of talented developers would step up to the plate and help. I would personally help them for free, but I'm not a developer, so I can only really help with ironing out the specifications. And as for the Blockbench plugin, Janice has already been collaborating with the Hytale team to some degree. I'm sure they could figure it out very easily. There would still be some expenses for maintaining the system, like funding a small team of moderator staff and maintaining the server infrastructure. Other games get around this by having cosmetics be monetized, but Simon obviously doesn't want that. I think it could be possible to lock it behind a supporter back, but that would be very unfortunate. Ultimately, I don't think it would cost all that much, and I believe that the player retention that the feature would create will make up for the cost, as it would mean more players would be spending money on the official Hypixel server. I also got some comments pointing out that adding custom models would be more difficult than I made it out to be, which is also true. There are a lot more factors that I didn't cover in the video. For example, certain cosmetics need to interact between each other, like hair being cut so it doesn't intersect with hats. And for balance reasons, you also need to verify that the cosmetics don't poke outside of armor. There would be a lot of considerations to take into account, so models are a lot more work to make and moderate compared to retextures, and would put a much bigger load on the system. There are a few things you can do to counteract this, like making models take up multiple submission slots or increasing the entry point for model submissions. I don't like the idea of locking it behind supporter or Cursebreaker edition, so instead it could be tied to experience, where you can only start submitting models after having successfully submitted 10 Orbis style retextures. And that brings us to the point that the feature is not necessary right now and could be added later. This is what I would expect Simon to respond with, and it is true, as it's not necessary for the game to function. And there is definitely some opportunity cost here, as the time and money you spend on this will be taken away from fixing the actual game. It is most likely something that can be added eventually, but how high it should be of a priority is a matter of opinion. However, with how important this is to so many people, I think it's at least a good thing to have a concrete plan for this soon, and then Simon can communicate that they have a plan, so anyone investing their time and effort into the game can be reassured that there will definitely be user-made cosmetics in the game at some point not too far into the future. I think most people would want it sooner than 2035. Simon also mentions that servers can have their own cosmetics, but I still think it's important to have cosmetics that apply across the whole game, and that you don't have to create a different character for each server you're in. But he also mentions that being in control of cosmetics is necessary because Cursebreaker Edition comes with exclusive items. However, that can still be the case with user-submitted cosmetics. You just keep back items like capes exclusive, and if you want to have other exclusive items, just ban anything that tries to replicate them. I also saw a lot of comments of people wanting them to remove moderation altogether and make user-made cosmetics an optional feature like the Figura mod. And I mean, I agree that this would be way cheaper and easier to implement, and it would allow for way more freedom, but I think they have good reasons to not do this. Their whole reason for disabling client mods is that they want everyone to be looking at the same thing, and this would go against that. For sure, it would be a nice feature to have on servers that don't care about curating the experience. Servers could also enable the feature in certain situations, like in lobbies, then disable them in-game. But I think this misses the point of people wanting to express their identity. To some you would only appear as a default character skin, which feels weird. It doesn't really feel canon. And then there's also the fact that Simon wants to have more control over the skins for safety and monetization purposes, so having user-made skins without moderation goes against that. I'm personally leaning more towards Simon's stance here, as I've personally never been a fan of client-side cosmetics, but I totally understand the other coin of the argument. I think this will come down to what the community wants, so no matter what your opinion is on cosmetics and Hytale, I encourage you to voice them respectfully as long as it hasn't been confirmed to be out of the question. Like Simon said, you can't please everyone, so I think it's best that we support the Hytale team even if we can't all get things our way. Unless he's against the monthly community vote, then we riot. Was that under 10 minutes? Yeah, nice.